All right, everyone, let's get this show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's March 16th, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that just means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time when you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. You'll get an iCal invite into your inbox so you can stay on top of all of our weekly calls. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of today's session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, let's jump into some announcements. It was a light week for announcements related to DevOps, Terraform, and anything that at least attracted my eye. So I got some fluff here. But anyways, these are still fun announcements that I saw, and I'm excited about these. So one is, we've been a big proponent of Leapp. Leapp is an open source tool. It's amazing for logging into AWS with single sign-on or IAM access credentials, or however you log into AWS. It makes it easy. It's a GUI CLI installed locally on your desktop. And they just added the ability now for automatic logins to web consoles, which is a nice thing that many of us use, like AWS switch roles extension for Chrome. It's supported by the AWS Vault CLI. Well, now Leapp supports that too. So there's almost no reason to use the browser extension anymore or AWS Vault on the command line anymore. Leapp makes it a much more positive experience. Anything to add to that?
Is it free?
Yes. Yeah, it's totally free. Totally free. It's on GitHub. It's open source.
Nice.
And we push all of our clients to use that. The issue is that especially if you're using single sign-on, and single sign-on is a web-based protocol for the most part in implementation. It's really the CLIs to do this, like SAML to AWS, they're literally doing screen scraping, and then Google blocks you. I see you laughing there, Ryan. I wasn't sure if you were laughing at
no, yeah, totally. Empathizing, yeah, absolutely. So just when I hear screen scraping, that's already a sign of like, oh gosh.
Yeah, we're doing something wrong. Yeah, exactly. And the other concerning thing is that, well, you are doing screen scraping at this point. You are trusting this third-party CLI to do it. You are giving it your actual credentials. That is a larger attack surface than trusting that Chrome isn't doing something nefarious and following the links through there and entering your credentials. The other announcement is positive for anyone using Packer and that hasn't already implemented some nifty pipelines in GitHub Actions, Jenkins, or however you do your Packer builds. So HCP, which is HashiCorp's cloud platform, has now built in support for Packer CICD. So it streamlines that process. The pricing is also available. I remember.
It's free if you're using 10 or fewer Packer images, which is pretty cool.
That is.
Yeah. The other thing is that this is they have a special Terraform resource or Terraform data source that can look up the latest version of an image from the HCP store or whatever it's called that they keep it in, and then automatically copy it into your accounts for you. It's so they do some pretty cool stuff with it.
Interesting. So it can build the image generically outside of AWS, and then it has a way to import the images that you need into AWS's Omnis.
And it can actually do it for all three of the major clouds as well, in there. So it's pretty cool.
So really building portable images. So that's a value add, I see. Otherwise, I was like, wait, like we can already do that with data sources and AMIs. Like, why would we need that? But
Yeah, although it helps you also like find outdated like AMIs that are being used in your account, and you can set like expiration policies on AMIs and a bunch of other things that you can't really do easily with the native tooling.
that's interesting. I didn't add it to the announcements for today. I was going to go office hours here. But Amazon just released some feature like that, similar, that they now publish like the last time an AMI was launched as part of the metadata of an AMI. So I guess that's somewhat related.
Yeah, and I think just if you put the compliance spin on it, the reason that expiration dates are like important is you can say like, if your patch management policy says that you update to the latest versions of whatever every 30 days, you can actually flag your instance as like expired if it's more than, or your AMI is expired if it's more than 30 days old. So and then like that can trigger building a new one, and then your code that launches those things can use this special data source that will automatically like get the right version from Hashi Cloud or whatever it's called, that where they store this stuff. So it seemed pretty cool. Yeah. I haven't actually done the whole lifecycle test myself, but in reading all the docs, it seems like it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. I think this I think HCP is really interesting just in general, because it's like this meta cloud. It's like build your own open source and then come up with a cloud delivery model for it where it works on multiple clouds. So it's, yeah, it's interesting. All right, next announcement would be, I put this out of order, but yeah, this is a good one. I like this one.
I was going to move it, but
yeah. Yeah, just head over to cloudposse.com/quiz if you're ever interested to see what it's like working with us. You'll get a live demo of what we do behind the scenes, what it actually looks like. It won't be nebulous what Cloud Posse is, and we save that for our demo. So check it out. Go to cloudposse.com/quiz and we'll see if we're a fit. The next thing is interesting. I thought this was interesting because it was like, wait, how Stack Overflow, like this is like, I thought this was probably one of the main ways they monetize Stack Overflow was with Stack Overflow jobs, but they're shutting it down. I know they have private sites, but I thought that was just one of the many revenue streams, of which I would have assumed their jobs platform, because jobs is a very well and understood industry, would have been it. But they're shutting down because they're basically saying, look, it's we're not competitive enough in this space, and developers, they don't have any trouble getting jobs. Companies have a lot of trouble finding developers. So we're going to try and solve the latter problem and not the former problem. Any comments on that? Insights on? Has anybody gotten a job through Stack Overflow jobs? Maybe no one's gotten a job here. So.
I've hired someone through there.
Yeah, was it a positive experience as an employee?
Yeah. It was good. I think on both sides. I was going to say though, I think we should prepare for that right column to start showing ads, like, because it's always been like the Stack Overflow, like remote jobs. Stack Overflow jobs has always been on the right, and I'm sure that means that there will now be impression-based ads in that right column.
So they did the math, and it just makes more sense to allow companies spend $200,000 to put one ad there rather than deal with the maintenance of a whole job site, which makes
that would be my guess. I don't have any insight, like any inside knowledge, but that would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I like the way you think.
Reacting to your comment about the fact that people don't have a problem looking for jobs. I've said a few things on LinkedIn recently and have gotten a lot of responses about along the lines of, well, you were lucky that you were able to find a job quickly, but I've put in 200 applications or whatever. Are we lucky because DevOps, is really hot and we
Yeah.
don't have trouble finding a job, but there's lots of programmers that do? I'm not plugged into the rest of the market.
I mean, I think anyone who's saying that they've sent out 200 inquiries and didn't get a job is looking at this as it's not my problem. And maybe looking inward is a better approach to marketing oneself and figuring out why there's a zero response. Cloud Posse, I'm going through something kind of similar. We're doing more cold outreach at Cloud Posse, and it's interesting because I don't blame them for not knowing who we are or not trusting us and, just responding, hey, that sounds great. Yeah, we'll definitely hire you right away. No, instead I say it's, something I'm doing wrong, something I got to tweak in the messaging, or I'm not speaking to the right person. I think these people, if you are not getting any success in the job market, change your plan of attack, because that's the only thing you have control over. So work on your own branding, increase the strength of your profile. It certainly doesn't hurt if you got a really active GitHub profile. What really does hurt is, sorry, that's proprietary. I can't show it. Oh, I did all this stuff. Oh, but I can't talk about it. It's confidential. If everything in your history and your track record is confidential, you become a weaker candidate, and it is unfair, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, I would also, since we're just talking about it, I would also add that my general personal observation is that the vast majority of recruiters out there are taking the lazy approach, and they're doing the I don't know, we're talking about candidates, but the opposite way. Like the recruiters are doing this thing where they're not doing any work, and they're throwing thousands of inquiries out there. Like I'm getting inquiries for junior level, entry level programmers, where I've been in the business for 20 years, and I'd be like, no, I'm not interested in your programmer level 1 position. Have you read my LinkedIn profile? Honestly, you could tell in 2 seconds that I'm way overqualified for what you're asking. It's frustrating that if you were in the market for a job that it's hard to, I guess the thing I'll say right now is that it's hard to go to a place where you can easily match up the skill levels and where you're at in your career with jobs that match that, and then easily hone in on those things and start having a conversation. It's I still don't think there's a great tool for doing that quite yet, in the market. But Stack Overflow jobs was not it. LinkedIn jobs is not it. None of the ones that I've used have tackled it. But interesting startup idea if you could somehow figure that out.
Yeah,
Make a lot of money.
Has anybody tried out this work at a startup by Y Combinator? I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah. So I actually found that a few years ago. And that's how I got hooked up with some people who were looking to actually do a start. They had a really good idea and a base kind of sketched out, but they needed to implement it. And I started working with them that way. That's how I found them, through Y Combinator. Yeah. I think this is probably one of the best ways, one's early in the career, not going into the enterprise job, not going for the big name, but instead going for the startup where you get to wear tons of hats, there's no limit on what you can do. It's not based on your job description. It's based on the opportunity at the company. And that's why I think working at startups is such a great opportunity if you're just getting started on the career. That was my trajectory. So that's why I guess I'm biased on that. All right. Anything else to add to the jobs conversation? All right. Next up,
if you're looking for a new job and you're working in DevOps, let Eric know.
Oh, duh. Yeah. So, if you're DevOps curious, and want to work with DevOps at scale, reach out to us. And, Carrie or Andy can help you guys out. All right. So going over
know, for those that aren't in the Slack already. I know some aren't. There is a jobs channel in the Cloud Posse Slack. And if you're on
That's
the
a good
Slack,
one
get on the
too.
Slack. Yeah, because we're not all there.
No, that's a really good one. Thanks for thinking of that. So the jobs channel we're talking about is pretty active. It's in the sweetops community. Feel free to, self-promote. You are looking for work. You'll meet like-minded individuals, other companies that are, 1 degree away from Cloud Posse, which is not a bad thing. And then post your jobs if you have any interesting jobs. And I would also highlight, if you are using Cloud Posse modules, you're using Terraform, sell your position, sell your opportunity. Why is it fun to work here? There's so many job ads out there that are so poorly written, they don't sell the opportunity. That I think that'll differentiate you. All right. Next up, this is a small one. It sounds more exciting than it is, and well, depending on what side of the boat you are. So a bill has been passed to make daylight savings permanent. It still needs to get approved by the House, and there's a ways to go. Boy, talk about Y2K kind of problems. This would be like the next Y2K problem, changing time zones. Can you imagine the cost of this change to the economy and implementing fixes and the chaos it will create for years afterwards, and all the legacy hardware that is not going to work anymore? Anyways, it is kind of interesting. Countries, America is one of the few countries that still has the daylight savings type of system. Countries that are equally as large in geography don't. There are many that don't. So I think we can get by without it. I don't know how I feel on it. I do like not waking up when it's dark outside, but I'll get over it. Anybody vehemently against this or vehemently for it?
I think it's outdated because it was really meant for farming. That's how the whole thing started, right? So
yeah.
But having what I'll say is, having lived in Arizona for a couple of years, it's a really weird situation where half the year you're an hour behind LA, and then for half the year you're on the same time zone as them, and then things that you expect to be at a certain time change for half of the year and things. So I'm sure they would be happy about it. I don't think it really affects most of us all that much, other than the technology implications. And we'll always, I guess, get a little bit of extra daylight at the end of the day, is if we stay on daylight savings time permanently.
Yeah, all I know is the next presidential nominee, who I'm glad they took this off the table, because if the next presidential nominee were to totally get rid of the daylight savings time, I would switch my political party to vote for that person, I think.
I'm a little bit more extreme. I feel as though this is a good step in the right direction, but I'm not satisfied until we have an American Standard Time across the continent. I don't care if you have to wake up at 4 a.m. or 9.
Oh, yeah.
China makes it work. There's no conversations for what time is it where you're at. Could you imagine not having to have those conversations? I'm all for it.
Yeah, I guess you just would have to get used to your normal day is, whatever, 3 a.m. till, something or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's also our industry a little bit, right? We have very flexible schedules often in our industry. Come in when you want, work when you want, leave when you want, and take infinite vacation when you want. So, but I guess in other industries it'd be harder.
Yeah, McDonald's can't just only serve breakfast till 11 a.m. anymore, or whatever. That has to change per region that they're in, or whatever else. That noon isn't really lunchtime or the middle of the day anymore for most people. It would cause a lot of weird behaviors, I think. But
that's seasons, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, impact on resources too, because now there's sort of a wave, from east to west on the impact on resource consumption. power, water, whatever you want to think about, right? Because people are active at different times of the day. But if everybody's active at the same time of the day, then yeah,
I don't think that's
well,
what it
that
implies,
wouldn't
though.
happen though, because people aren't gonna like spend 3/4 of their day in the dark because there's universal time anymore. Like they would just shift the time of the day that they get up and go to bed, right?
Yeah.
Like,
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I'm thinking everybody's getting up at 8 a.m. Right?
Oh, that would
no
suck.
matter where.
Oh, no, suck. Then I'd be against it. Yeah, then I veto.
That would also take a really long time to get your body used to that. I bet.
Andrew Roth, you were going to say something, I think.
Oh, I was just going to tell about there's a hilarious quote I read in an article about daylight savings time, that the people that don't like it are the early birds who are going to miss that 1 hour of sunshine between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. or whatever. And me being a night owl was like, ha, suck it, early birds.
Yeah. For me, it wouldn't make too much of a difference. I'm usually up after the sun rises regardless. So.
Yeah, I think the if everyone did get up at the same time, that would do some really weird things to like circadian rhythms and probably depression and a bunch of other things, like if you spent a lot less of your time in sunlight. So anyway.
I'd like to get Carrie's opinion on this one. Carrie is our one of our technical project managers, but she's an anomaly. She gets up at like 4:30, 5 every day.
I'm
so
24/7. I've never had a time zone. Every company I ever worked for, migrations, maintenance, it's anytime, all the time. So bring it. It's all the same thing.
All right.
I would never be able to function like that.
I wish I could function that way.
The good news is that we'll all have a lot of things to do with all these remediations for years to come if they pass this.
Yeah, it'll create a whole new industry, like the Y2K industry. I don't know, but I spoke to somebody else recently. I forget who it was. I worked at a Y2K company. Like their business was building solutions for Y2K.
It was me. We had the same
that was
thing
you.
at Honeywell.
That's
right. A bunch of executives left Honeywell. They started this company, and nothing happened.
I got paid $20,000 as a bonus to sit in a conference room next to a data center on New Year's Eve for Y2K, because someone like the vice president came to me and said, would you like go to this party? We'll host a party for you and your family, but next to the data center in case something happens. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And they're like, how much would it cost? And I was like, I don't know, like way too much money to get me to do it. I don't want to give up my New Year's Eve. He's like how much? And I was like, I don't know, like 20 grand. And the guy was like, okay. And I was like, what? I'm like, I should have said 100.
What a story.
So I sat there and ate food and watched the ball drop on the TV, and nothing happened, and I got paid 20 grand, which was pretty good, I guess.
Oh. Well played.
Yeah.
What's the next when is it when Linux epoch time overflows the 16-bit time or whatever? Is that 2037? 2038. There you go. That'll be another fun event.
Oof. That is going to be. All right. Next one, also this is just filler, but I thought it was kind of cool use of drones for a new Paramount movie. They flew 400 drones in the sky as a swarm, not a Docker swarm, but a drone swarm. And pretty effective. There's some videos of it too, you can see.
Go back. I want to try.
I probably need to zoom it in here.
It worked.
It worked? No way. Over Zoom.
Yep. It goes to a website about Halo, the video game.
That's cool. All right. Anyone else have any news they want to add before we get into Q&A?
I will say I've seen some of the code for the for drone swarms the thing, so that the protocol that they actually use to communicate with each other and how they keep themselves in line and how they
There's like a
do
standard
all
for
that.
it?
Yeah, it's
No way.
it's pretty cool. Like if you've read it, I forget where I found it, but I was on some wormhole thing one day and I came across it and was reading all the code and thought it was really cool how it all worked.
And it's, I'm guessing it's all like a peer-to-peer mesh between the drones, and
Yeah.
that's cool.
And they
Wow.
have like a consensus protocol to tell each drone like what to do, and then finally
They implemented Raft.
yeah, it's something like that, but then it's like if they all lose communication, or if any drone loses communication for some period of time, it basically like flies itself back to its origin point and like lands. It's pretty cool. I was like, wow, someone thought this through. Because you don't want drones to just fall out of the sky. That's pretty bad.
Exactly. And when you're flying 400 drones, there's got to be some percentage of failure, even if it's just 1%. So I'm curious, like, if I would love to hear a recap or postmortem of this event and how it went, and you know,
yeah,
if there were any failures. That'd be cool. Yes, if anyone has any more information about how this event was put on, I'd be curious, or even the company behind it. All right, let's jump into a Q&A. We had a couple, we had one from last week or the week before, and it was specifically around avoiding EKS IP exhaustion and how to avoid this. I'm not sure if we have Mr. DevOps on the line today.
Not under that name, no.
Yeah.
Is that, you think that's his real name, or it's Paul DevOps?
Yeah, that'd be something. I wonder if anybody's changed their name to that yet for SEO. Yeah. So we've had to deal with this recently with one of our customers, and the TLDR is basically using larger EKS nodes, using I forget what it's called. You can, the ENI, the container networking, the CNI now supports using multiple, I forget how it works, but you can now double the capacity of the number of pods on a node. And lastly, use a mesh, use something like Calico. Don't use CNIs altogether. And then you can get really high density.
Eric, would you recommend against using the default CNI then? Because that uses 1 IP per pod, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I would not recommend against using the default. I would optimize for this when you have the problem. Ideally, so like in the case of our customer here, they're doing proactive load testing. And through their load testing, they realized that if they were to move their current workloads over, they quickly hit the exhaustion here. Now, there were a couple other problems they ran into that I can't explain. I wasn't involved in the testing. It's kind of or like we weren't actually, Cloud Posse wasn't involved in the testing. They were seeing an exceptionally high usage of, they were seeing like 2x the number of IPs used than the number of pods deployed. And that I can't explain. And they're just using.
My guess would be that they had some sort of pod failures. So a pod would start to spin up on like one thing, it would reserve an IP, then it would fail for some reason, then it would spin up on a different node before it actually came live. And then that other IP is like, so now
like so it could be exasperated. Yeah. Especially when there's high churn and just even a certain amount of percentage of pods failing.
Well, and also like if you're doing that much churn on your cluster, like the balancer is going to try to balance that traffic out a little bit, right? The actual like pod scaler or whatever is going to like kill some pods and bring others up, which is also going to exhaust an IP address when you do that.
That's true. Yeah. If it's trying to rebalance. Anyone else have something to add to this?
Hi, Eric. My name is Isa.
Hi, Isa. Yeah, long time.
And my company is also running into IP exhaustion. We do a lot of batch events, like batch scale-ups. So we do nodes, and then every node, we actually have implemented some environment variables that are available for EKS that you do like max ENI warm IP addresses, or ENI warm IP addresses, and there's also a AWS ENI calculator that you could say to limit how many IP addresses an actual node could get. So we needed to do that because we actually have a lot of nodes with a little bit of, with a small amount of IPs on it. But we still run into an issue where when we get a lot of nodes in, the IP exhaustion just, we can't.
I have a radical idea for you, but I need to know a little bit more about what you're doing. A radical but simple idea. But when you're doing these batch scale outs, what is the purpose and what are they doing?
Yeah, so they actually run workflows. So the company that I work for, they do genetic sequencing data. So we have to have like high compute. And so it's basically a pod that runs on a single node. It has to run on the single node in order to use basically all of the node's resources because it's extremely intense. And
you already just have one pod per node. And you're experiencing IP exhaustion in the VPC. It's not exasperated by the fact that you have multiple pods per node. It's just,
it's exasperated because we have so many nodes.
Okay.
And there's so many daemon sets that
and you
have to run
can't
on
get
these
larger
things.
nodes.
It wouldn't help the IP issue because we're already limiting like a small amount of IPs. So it's just a CNI issue. Like I heard you mention that you could use Calico on EKS, which if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I remember using Calico when I did COPS a long time ago.
Exactly, back in the day.
That basically creates a pod network almost. That
you have an overlay network.
Is that an option for EKS? Because I don't know why
you can run Calico. And there's others.
It's not my problem.
There are other. It's not restricted to Calico as well, and there's others. I just don't remember them off the top of my head.
So is the AWS CNI not a requirement when you're using EKS?
Not anymore, at least. And like there's another CNI, I forget what it's called, but it implements like a mesh automatically behind the scenes.
Right?
No, Weave is another one. Weave is an alternative, of course, to Flux. To Calico. I'm just throwing out buzzwords here. Sorry, disregard me. No, this is yet another one that's come up. I think it originated within Google. I don't remember what it's called though. I heard about it just because one of our customers back in the day was asking us if we would recommend using it. And well, my answer was no, because you're not going to get AWS support for it. Which is another consideration. So anyways, my radical, go on.
So I was just going to say one thing for Isa is that there are some articles now that talk about using the AWS IPAM, the IP address manager, to interface with the CNI to actually like automatically allocate new IP blocks when you get exhausted from your overall block. So I haven't actually walked through all the steps of how to do it. I've only theoretically read that it's possible to do. So that might be also something to check out there.
That's pretty radical. Kubernetes provisioning additional network blocks to be used for pods. Wow.
One other thing to point out too is as you start trying to hack the number of pods per IP, or basically the pods on the NIC, like you really need to understand your system and understand your throughput, because I've seen systems where like people have saturated the NICs, they've saturated their ENIs and stuff. So it's like, even if you can squeeze more pods onto an EC2 instance, should you? You just got to understand like your throughput and everything.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using the 100 gig ones, that if you have the biggest instances, it's pretty hard to saturate. But some of those like 100 meg and 1 gig connections, you can saturate them pretty easily.
Yeah. So if I was, if this was an implementation scaling out, for example, for web crawlers or some kind of a product like that, where the pods don't need to talk to each other, but you might have thousands and thousands of them running, and it would be just a waste of space, I would consider actually just using host network in this case. And if that's a security concern, then having a separate node pool specifically for that. And then you avoid all the IP exhaustion problems altogether, unless you run into the problem where you just have so many nodes and then, well, you know, that's a fundamental problem to solve. It's not exasperated by CNIs.
Well, one question I had
mean,
in this kind of realm, sorry, Andy, let me jump in front if you don't mind. What about using the IPv6 subnet?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is timely for me because I'm actually looking at using IPv6 subnets, you know, past couple of weeks. But my concern is I'm trying to add either another VPC that's IPv6 only and peer it with an IPv4 network, or add IPv6 only subnets to an existing VPC. But I don't want to break anything, so I haven't done anything yet. I'm just kind of looking at it. So if anybody's done anything like that, I would be happy to sit at the hem of your garment and listen to what you have.
I think for Isa's problem, that makes a lot of sense, since he just has, even for the node level, they're exhausting IPs. But for people exhausting IPs because of pod density on nodes, this won't really help that much. Since Amazon still restricts the number of ENIs per node.
Well, yeah.
Instance type.
It gets a little complicated to make sure that when we're, like Ryan was talking about oversubscription, like it gets a little complicated if those IPv6 pods have to actually talk to IPv4 services. You want to make sure that your gateway doesn't get oversaturated as well, like from all those things that are talking across it, which is also, I've seen that happen a bunch of times too. So, but if it's all native IPv6 workloads, then it's pretty, you know, that's a pretty good solution.
But yeah, we're at the point now with ECS where we can't spin up new load balancers to front ECS services because, well, I mean, to connect to all the subnets we need to connect to, and the interface is telling us it's like 8 IP addresses per subnet or something like that. And our VPC subnets are provisioned to the account. So we're given an allotment, you know, of IPs that we can use, and we are reaching the end of that allotment. So any modifications, though, we run the risk of overlapping someone else's IP range. So it's kind of a, you know, it's a very touchy change to make.
That is an interesting problem. So since we have Ryan on the line today, I want to jump ahead and get to some of your questions, Ryan. One of the questions you had was, what's everyone's experience installing and running Teleport on Kubernetes? And we have a lot of recent experience. I wish we had RB on the line, but he's out of the office until beginning of April. I'll tell you what our experience has been.
Yeah.
Because we've been using this for like 4 years, I think, Teleport.
Nice.
So when we started using Teleport, deploying Teleport on Kubernetes wasn't the recommended path per se on Kubernetes itself. They took a strictly bare VM, bare metal approach. Like you should be installing as part of your AMI, the Teleport agents and configuring it. The other problems have been that, you know, you're creating this network of trust, and there was almost no way to do that with automation. You almost always had to run some Teleport commands to connect the nodes. Sorry, it's to get the network up. And what I mean by that, they have, I forget the exact, there's like the Teleport proxy, there's the Teleport auth service, and then you have the Teleport agents, and then you have a main like Teleport auth service. And then you had to, you know, bless kind of like the auth servers underneath that. Now, I think that it's gotten a whole lot easier to deploy Teleport lately. So some of these problems are now gone. There's also Teleport's hosted service, which should eliminate some of that configuration. I don't know if that's an option for you to look at, but I would recommend that just so that it's more just like deploy the agents and be done with it. And if it's, but if you do still have to host it all, then here's the truism I'll leave you with is that it's still open source or open core. And they release new versions still probably at least every 6 months to every quarter. And every time a new big version like that has dropped, it's been a 1 to 2 week project for us to like update everything, test it, roll it out. And it's in the critical path of everything. So we have, as much as I love Teleport as a product, super cool, it's still a big undertaking for a small team to oversee.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I was curious if you had any like aha or like something that totally wasn't obvious. And I think kind of that 2-week patch management like is kind of like one of those big things.
That's been our experience, because what it's been is that like, you know, we haven't touched it then for 6 months. We don't remember anything.
Yeah.
We have to go figure out what was deprecated. We got to go change things over. And then what also is difficult is, you know, if you are truly using this for audit purposes, you know, the ways in which you have been able to log things to, in the beginning, they didn't even support S3. We pushed them hard to get S3 and they ultimately saw it our way and came around for it. Before that, they were saying, no, you log it to a local file system. We were like, what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then we ultimately supported EFS with that, but you know, it's water under the bridge. They support private CAs now, which is really nice. Automate some of the TLS setup and configuration. We have found a lot of problems with their charts that they maintain, and we've never been able to use their charts out of the box ever.
Okay.
So we still have a fork of their charts when we go deploy it on customer sites to automate it the way we want to automate it.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, my peer was on the call earlier, Sung Ho. He's been implementing everything, and he got it up and running, Helm charts, and just we've been playing with it and demoing it and getting everything. Yeah, everything is working internally. So yeah, I just always love coming to the community here and just hearing like, hey, you know, what experiences do you have? So yeah, that helps a lot.
I would have him go into like I don't know, just one of the channels, random or something. Yeah. Have him tag RB in the channel, and I'm sure that'll you know, trigger his instinct to reply almost instantaneously on what his experiences were. So RB would be one, Igor is another. So yeah.
RB and Igor, got it. Sweet.
Eric, was Cilium the other CNI you were thinking of?
Yeah. No.
I think that's the Google one.
That's the Google one. Okay, then that must have been it. I thought it was a 3-letter acronym in my head, but I guess I'm wrong. So Cilium it is then. Yeah. And that, they came out of Google, and it implements a mesh.
And that's actually what they're using for Google.
Google
or GK, GK. Jesus, I can't speak today. I don't know what's wrong with me. But that's also the one that they use by default there.
And the next one, I just my experience with crossplane.io is FOMO. I'm not sure who else can relate to that, and I feel like I'm missing out on something. I want to like a tool like that. We haven't kicked the tires on it at Cloud Posse yet. My generic, what's the word I'm looking for? Objection is that, well, you know, it is an opinion framework in and of itself. I'm sure you get something up really nice and very quickly, relatively quickly, but then you want to try and integrate that one other tool and you can't get it working. So that's why it's kind of been not in our solution, because what we're trying to do is piece together all the independent tools in such a way we can tie in any other tool that comes along. And that kind of precludes us from using another opinionated framework on top of like infrastructure provisioning, Kubernetes provisioning, and so forth. But I'm more excited about Backstage and using that. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a direct competitor by any means, but it adds the visual element to what you've already built on top of your systems, so that you have a single page like your intranet, where you have your documentation, you have your dashboards, it ingests your stuff from Datadog, it ingests your things from GitHub Actions, it ingests what you have from Jenkins, your Circle CI, because your organization's been around for 15 years, so you have everything deployed. Backstage is that, and it's a framework that lets you plug in and write your own plugins for it, for everything. Originally came out of Spotify. And I want to have them on office hours, but yeah, and Matt Calhoun has even tried to connect me, and I haven't followed through on it.
So let me ask the question in the other way too, because crossplane is like a solution to a problem. So let me ask the problem. So
yeah, that's good.
If you wanted to have like developers, front and back end, kind of self-service their infrastructure, and everything's running on Kubernetes anyways, but they need to self-service some like an S3 bucket, an SQS topic, and like SNS, right? So they need to manage those three things. Like, what would you recommend for them to manage it? Given that, Terraform, man, we got to learn Terraform type thing. I don't really want to learn that. So like, well, we already have Kubernetes configuration, so maybe something in Kubernetes.
Before I answer, somebody else want to chime in?
I think what you're going to answer is the approach you guys use, but the way that I would answer that is, you can always create an abstraction of Terraform that reads in a YAML file that describes the objects you want to create and creates objects from that like YAML declaration.
Right.
So that's what, Cloud Posse has done with Atmos and with, at a large scale. But you can, if you're not willing to take the plunge into Atmos, which is awesome and I recommend, you can always do that on your own. So like a common way of doing that I do at a lot of clients is, they want to manage all of their, or, really it's that I push my clients to manage their users through infrastructure as code if they're not on SSO. So like things like managing Datadog users or managing AWS users or managing, whatever, you can create a team.yaml file that like each entry, each like map entry in that file is a user. And then your Terraform reads that file, iterates over it, and creates the corresponding Terraform resource blocks to actually enable creating those users in the system. So you can do the same thing for S3 and SNS topics and X, Y, and
That's
Z.
what we do. Yeah,
that's what you guys do at like, but you have to be fully bought in on the framework, and it's awesome. So I suggest doing that.
Exactly. So either way, you need to buy into a framework when you build at home, when you use, that's out there like Cloud Posse's or others. And the idea is though that you need to have an abstraction there somewhere. We've chosen that abstraction layer in Terraform. It could be Pulumi, it could be something else. But so here we implement the business logic. Like this is how we implement an EKS cluster. Here's the Terraform code. It under the hood leverages, Cloud Posse's open source modules. But then we need a configuration interface. So what you want to do is expose to your teams, your developers, a simple way that they can get their job done following a declarative method. Terraform's HCL is technically declarative.
Yeah.
But it wasn't declarative enough in my mind. So that's why what we've done is gone with like a slightly different approach. And that's when we define a catalog. Here's all of your reusable services. Here's like a standard like S3 bucket or a CloudTrail bucket. So if your developers can write YAML, can update these things, they can add as many buckets, as many SNS topics, as many things as they want. And what I like about it is that it's now it's somewhat tool agnostic. Yes, we have a tool that wrote this, or a tool that reads this and works with Terraform, but ultimately it's just YAML. So how you create that YAML, that could be through cookie cutter, or it could be through some other service that they request, like imagine a large enterprise through ServiceNow or Jira Service Management. They could literally request something that all it does is spits out a bunch of YAML into a Git repo, and you can keep working with it. Now, this is like you talk to a person who is totally indoctrinated into infrastructure as code and everything has to be that way. And we look for a solution that fits that worldview. that's why I like this. It's code. We can do static analysis. We can do linting on it. We can have GitHub Actions on it. We can do anything on it. And the UI, it looks great on demos, but it in practice is very hard to get both a great UI and a great infrastructure as code backend. Like ultimately, if you're going to have a great UI and a great infrastructure as code at backend, you actually have a UI committing to version control, and that also feels dirty to me. So I think that the best solution is just come up with something that works in configuration.
I have another radical suggestion for you. Have you taken a look at the what's it called, ACK or whatever? It's the AWS controllers for Kubernetes.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because that actually allows you to deploy AWS resources directly from your Kubernetes manifests as well, which also ticks the box of being managed as code and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not the easiest thing, but like it works.
I think if you did that, you'd abstract it away into charts or feature flags of like a mono chart that your company has, and then you would implement the most standard features there. Note, it still doesn't do IAM. It's not going to do IAM out of principle.
No,
because I don't think it does URSA. Create an IAM role. For this service that you're going to need. And you're going to want to have these Kubernetes pods running that only have access to that S3 bucket. And you don't want to just create one general role for all S3 buckets probably. So now you're back to square one. So you've got 99% of the way there. You can do everything with ACT and your Kubernetes Helm charts, but you still can't do your URSA. And that's so frustrating because you still have to solve that lowest common denominator problem there. And so what we use for that, therefore, is we're still using Terraform to create those service account roles, to create the backing services for microservices. And it's not the outcome I wish we had, but it's the cold reality of where we're at in infrastructure as code.
So, and then I thought I heard somebody say something about Atmos. Is that something, or did I miss?
Oh, come on, Ryan. It hurts me. It hurts so bad. Ryan has been in our community for like 5 years since I started Cloud Posse. He said,
this Atmos. I know this Atmos. I thought you were talking about a different Atmos.
So it is this Atmos we're talking about, and this is how we are working with Terraform. It's how we manage our configurations. We have some tutorials that Matt Gowie helped us with. Granted, they are now a little bit out of date, but the gist of them is still true. You go to Cloud Posse /tutorials, and there's like an example here where you can see like, here's how you define some components. Here's how you define your stacks. And the idea with the catalog is reusable configuration. So you would define a catalog for a bucket, for an SQS topic, for an SES service, for your RDS database, Redis, Elasticsearch. So basically, when we engage with a customer, what we're doing is we're building out that catalog of every service that comprises their current or future desired state of their infrastructure. And then once you have that, defining an environment is so easy because you're just importing configuration files like this. Now, this is such a crude example. It's not that as helpful from a presentation here, but if I went into this other here of like Cloud Posse stacks and go into like a sandbox here, we're importing the non-production baseline, and we're importing the EKS cluster for Blue here
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that it's probably worth noting in here that just mentioning that we also have the Terraform provider that can consume this. And
that's a really good one. So that is connecting the dots here.
Yeah.
So we wrote, because we have the stack configuration and it's very powerful what you can do with it, we weren't able to do it in just pure HCL. So we wrote a Terraform provider, which is where we put all of these kinds of things. And this Terra-utils provider supports our stack configuration. It supports YAML deep merging and all of that. So because it's all native Terraform in the end, it works really well with Terraform.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I like it. Thank you. Thank you for
We
the
will be
deep
having
dive on
more
it.
demos. We will be having more demos shortly, probably within the next 45 days of Atmos and all of our tooling. We've just been building up the demo environment for all of this. And that's going to be ready pretty soon. So we're going to be showing how we do release engineering, how we use GitHub Actions, how we use Terraform and Atmos, how we use Spacelift. We're going to be really pulling back the curtains on everything. All right. We are basically out of time for today. So let's leave it at that unless there are final thoughts on what we just talked about.
I had one question that I think probably would be short. I wanted
Yep,
to
go for it.
ask what the latest discussions are with doing 1.0 on the Terraform modules.
Oh, yeah. To recap what Andrew was just talking about, we are talking internally about how we will get all of our modules to 1.0 and start practicing. We are practicing proper Semver today, but start introducing support for major and minor versioning on everything for our modules and maintaining multiple versions concurrently. So this year it's going to happen. We're going to go to 1.0 for 1.0 or later on our Terraform modules and start that. No update on it yet as to when that's going to happen. It's I think there's some things that are probably going to happen, Andrew, before we get to that. One of them is we're adding support for Atmos to vendor or pull down modules or basically code or configuration from anywhere. And when we have that missing piece in Atmos, now we have a strong incentive for Cloud Posse to have stable versions of modules for extended periods of time. So that's probably when we will be ready or mature enough to start having that. The thing we got to figure out is, are we going to have long-lived release branches? Are we still going to just have everything in trunk? I don't know. I'm leaning towards long-lived release branches for every minor release, and that way we can do hot fixes for it. And it's gonna be requiring changes to our whole CI tooling.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Thanks.
And our CI tooling is also in progress. So we are in the process of refactoring all of our CI tooling into composite actions so that we can centralize that in a better way, supporting some of the latest GitHub Actions functionality. This is a prerequisite, I think, for being able to do what we want to do in order to support those branches. So yeah, good question. Stay tuned. Thank you. All right, everyone, go right now, youtube.com/cloudposse, click that subscribe button. Appreciate it. Thank you. And you can catch today's episode there in a few hours. We also have our back catalog of all past office hours episodes. So if you missed it, last week's was really interesting. Do check it out. I forget what was it right now. I just remember thinking it was really interesting. We talked about remote state and is it good or bad? And we had a lot of interesting conversations on when you want to use Terraform remote state, when you don't want to use Terraform remote state, should you use data sources, should you use tags, should you use SSM parameter store. We covered all of that. It was like a good half-hour conversation. So check that out if you missed that. If you haven't connected with me yet on LinkedIn, go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. I love to stay in touch with everyone. If you do that, add a little note that you come from office hours or sweetops, so I know you're not a recruiter. That's the test. That's the password.
Ask Eric if he wants an entry-level programming job.
Yeah, exactly. Please don't do that, please. All right, so then subscribe to office hours. We have a calendar invite that goes out. Go to cloudposse.com/office hours and you'll get an invitation to that. All right, see you all next week, same time, same place. Great session as always. Thanks to everyone. Good to see you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.